Hello and welcome to another analysis behind the news, where we provide the perspective that you can use to help save American liberty and independence. Today we only have one action item for you, so please stay tuned. Last week, just ahead of the G7 summit held in Canada, The Hill published an article with the title, "Top EU Figure: Trump is Undermining World Order the US Created." They reported, the rules-based international order is being challenged, not by the usual suspects, but by its main architect and guarantor, the US. Donald Tusk, president of the European Commission, told reporters at a news conference, according to the Washington Post. Now, they actually have it wrong. Mr. Tusk is the president of the European Council, not the Commission. Anyway, he continues. "We will not stop trying to convince our American friends and President Trump that undermining this order makes no sense at all, because it would only play into the hands of those who seek a new post-West order where liberal democracy and fundamental freedoms would cease to exist," he said. This is laughable, given the organization that he represents. Let us give you an idea of what the European Council is and what it does. According to its own website, the European Council is to determine the EU, the European Union's, general political direction and priorities, essentially setting the policy agenda for the EU. This direction and priorities are used as guidelines for legislating proposals by the European Commission, which proposes legislation, carries out decisions, and manages the day-to-day business of the EU. Now, in 2014, the European Council adopted a strategic agenda that covers 5 priority areas to be completed by 2019. And all 5 are a dictator's dream come true, using each area as an excuse to build more and more regional government. And therein lies the problem. This regional government has stripped away most of the sovereignty and independence of each of its 28 member states. Those on the EU Council, as well as the EU Commission and, well, indeed, the rest of the EU infrastructure, are made up of heads of state from many different countries. The EU creates laws for all of its member states, and each country is expected to adopt laws to follow the EU's dictates. Citizens in these member states have no recourse from those in the EU. These EU bureaucrats are unaccountable. Let's put it this way. If the US ever got into a North American Union, it'd be like Americans being told what to do by the heads of state from Mexico and Canada. So let's think about this for a minute. Here we have a top figure in the EU whining that President Trump is undermining world order. But what has the European Union done? It has reorganized world order in Europe under regional unaccountable government. And that is exactly what many of the elite top world leaders want to see: the United States to become just a cog in the global wheel. We are still well on our way to becoming one, having been set up throughout the last few decades by those upholding a globalist agenda. But then again, along comes candidate Trump, who runs on an America First platform and wins over a heavily entrenched establishment candidate. As president, his America First drive on the world stage has set globalists into a panic. Even more evidence of this was in the media last week with the annual convening of the Bilderberg secret meeting. As the New American magazine reported, the group of global deep state insiders was meeting to discuss threats to its globalist agenda. The Washington Post reported that one of the top globalist donors was lamenting that Trump is willing to destroy the world. And of course, we're talking about George Soros here, who, as the Post writes in here, has poured much of his fortune into promoting liberal values around the globe, is now confronting a wave of nationalist sentiment washing against issues that he has championed. Another article from the New American provided even more credence to the whining of globalists. The headline states, "Merkel calls for EU to lead the world as it is reorganized." Mitchell Shaw wrote, during Wednesday's meeting of the European People's Party in Munich, German Chancellor Angela Merkel recalled her statement from more than a year ago that the times when we could fully rely on others are to some extent over. Her remark appears to be a slam of President Trump, who had criticized European countries for paying such a small percentage of NATO's budget. She went on to criticize President Trump for withdrawing from both the Paris Climate Treaty and the Iran nuclear deal, saying, all of that confirms the assessment that the world is being reorganized. And since the world is being reorganized, Merkel said that the EU should position itself as the leader of that reorganization. So, say what you want about President Trump, but there's no denying that even with all his faults, he is definitely panicking the New World Order planners. We would estimate that there hasn't been an American president in the last 180 or so years that has produced so many setbacks to these New World Order planners. And it wasn't that long ago that using the term New World Order caused eyebrows to raise in polite company. Yet those that advocate for a New World Order have no problem using the term and have built up the regional government bodies to prove it. There is no denying that this is their intention, and we would be foolish to think that it is anything but a new order that will see our liberties and independence give way to global citizenship in which rights come from an unaccountable and unforgiving government. Our founder Robert Welch once said that there will come a day when those who want to control us will be so exposed that they will be seen naked running in the streets toward the finish line. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to that day. So if you're intent on protecting your rights, then you owe it to yourself, your children, and your grandchildren to join the longest lasting and most effective organization that exposes these forces and thwarts the agenda of these controlling globalists. There has never been a better time to be a member of the John Birch Society. So, action item number 1, join the John Birch Society today at jbs.org. And until next time, we'll see you then.